I never thought I'd be the kind of man who questioned the woman he promised forever to. My name is Ethan Mercer. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania where everybody knew your business, where people stayed married because that's just what you did. My parents had been together for 38 years and they drilled it into me that marriage wasn't disposable. You didn't quit when it got hard. You fought. You held on. When I was 26, I met Rachel, the woman I was sure I'd grow old with. She was a nurse, compassionate, sharp-witted, with a smile that could pull me out of the darkest mood. Back then, I was a construction project manager, constantly running between job sites, juggling subcontractors, always bone-tired but proud of the work I did. We met in the most ordinary way, at a coffee shop near the hospital. She dropped her bag, spilled half her latte, and I bent down to help her clean up the mess. That clumsy moment stretched into conversation, and the conversation turned into dinner. One dinner became many. We fell fast, maybe too fast. Within a year, we were married. We rented a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia. The plaster cracked in the corners, the windows let in the winter draft, but it was ours. We made it work. Those first years, God, they were good. We worried about money like everyone else, but Rachel backed me up through every late paycheck, every missed holiday. I admired how she pulled 12-hour shifts and still managed to laugh with me on our couch. We talked about kids, about a house with a yard, about vacations we swore we'd take someday. She was my best friend before anything else, but marriage doesn't implode in a single night. It frays at the edges, threads snapping one by one until suddenly the fabric looks foreign. I didn't see it at first. It was subtle. Rachel picked up more shifts, said the hospital was short-staffed. She came home late, sometimes past midnight, too drained to even sit at the table. Of course I believed her. Nurses live in chaos, but little things started to gnaw at me. Her phone never left her side. She laughed at texts with a softness that didn't sound like work banter. "It's just Emily from the unit," she'd say when I asked, rolling her eyes. "Don't be paranoid." But her scent shifted. Not her lotion. She always wore the same vanilla cream, but her. When I hugged her, beneath the faint sting of hospital disinfectant, there was something else, something distinctly male. I told myself I was imagining it. I wanted to believe that. Then one night, close to midnight, I woke to an empty bed. Her shift was supposed to end hours earlier. I called, no answer, texted, nothing. I sat on the couch, eyes glued to the clock, stomach in knots until 2 a.m. when the door finally opened. She slipped inside with her hair damp, cheeks flushed like she'd just stepped out of someone else's shower. "Emergency surgery," she said quickly, dropping her bag. I nodded, pretending to believe, but something inside me shifted, a voice whispering, "She's lying." The signs only piled up after that. She started dressing differently. Lipstick, fitted dresses under her coat, extra time in front of the mirror before work. When I kissed her, she'd turn her face just slightly, enough to leave me kissing air. And then came the night I crossed a line. She left her phone on the counter while showering. It buzzed. I shouldn't have looked, but my hands moved on their own. The message glowed on the screen from a contact named Mark Hospital. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. Same time tomorrow?" My heart clenched like a fist. My hands trembled as I set the phone back exactly where it had been. When she stepped out, wrapped in a towel, smiling like nothing was wrong, I matched her smile, even as my chest hollowed out. I didn't confront her right away. Some part of me still wanted to be wrong, to gather more than a single damning text before I shattered everything we had built. So I watched. I listened. I waited. A week later, she told me she was covering another late shift. I followed. I parked across the street from the hospital, eyes locked on the entrance. At 8:30 p.m., Rachel walked out. Not in scrubs, not in her work shoes, but in a short black dress I had never seen before. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might be sick. Rachel didn't head toward the hospital wing at all. She walked down the block like she knew exactly where she was going, and straight into the arms of a tall man in a leather jacket. Mark. They kissed under the orange glow of a street lamp. Not a quick peck. A full, desperate kiss that looked like it had been building for weeks. My hands locked around the steering wheel, white-knuckled. Every ounce of me screamed to throw the car in park, storm across the street, and tear him away from her. But I didn't. I sat there, frozen, heart splintering, as the woman I vowed my life to disappeared into a hotel with another man. For weeks after, I wore a mask. Every morning I kissed her goodbye. Every night I asked about her shifts, nodding while she lied through her teeth. Inside I was rotting. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The betrayal gnawed at me like a parasite tunneling through my chest. And then came the dreams. At first I chalked them up to stress. I'd wake at 2 or 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, convinced I'd heard whispers in the apartment. Sometimes I saw shadows shifting in the corner of the room. Sometimes I heard my own name breathed like a secret. Maybe it was the pressure breaking me. Maybe it was my mind unspooling thread by thread. But the line between dream and reality blurred until I couldn't tell one from the other. One night, lying awake in the dark, I felt the mattress dip, as if someone had sat beside me. I turned, expecting to see Rachel, but she was faced away, asleep. Still, I swear I felt a hand graze mine in the dark. I couldn't hold it in anymore. One Sunday afternoon, while she was folding laundry in the living room, it all burst out of me. "Who's Mark?" Her body froze mid-motion, a sock dangling from her fingers. Her eyes shot to mine, wide, terrified. "What are you talking about? Don't lie to me." My throat burned as the words tore out. "I saw you. I followed you." Her face crumbled, tears welling fast. "Ethan, just let me explain." Her voice broke into sobs. She admitted it all, that it started as harmless flirting, that she felt lonely with me, always buried in work, that she didn't mean for it to go so far. Excuses. Nothing but excuses. "You destroyed us," I whispered. She reached for me, desperate. "Please, Ethan, I love you. It was a mistake, I swear." But the image of her under that street lamp replayed in my mind on a loop, stabbing me over and over. I told her I needed space. I couldn't look at her without my stomach turning. That night, I slept on the couch. Sometime after midnight, I woke to whispers again. Low, too close. My heart hammered as I sat up. The apartment was dark, but in the hallway I saw it. Someone standing there, still as stone. "Rachel?" I called. No answer. I stood, crept closer. The figure dissolved into the dark. When I turned, Rachel was in the kitchen, standing there, staring at me, her skin pale, her eyes hollow. "Are you okay?" I asked, voice trembling. She didn't reply. She just turned and walked back to the bedroom. But when I followed, the bed was empty, sheets cold. On her pillow lay a folded note. It read, "Our home." My blood ran cold. Those words, "our home," they were the same ones that had haunted my nightmares. For a moment, I wondered if betrayal had cracked my mind beyond repair. The next morning my phone rang. It was the hospital. Rachel had been in a car accident the night before. They said she hadn't survived. The phone slipped from my hand. My ears rang. I thought about the kitchen, about the lifeless eyes staring back at me just hours earlier. If Rachel had already died before that moment, then who, or what, had been in my apartment? It's been 2 years since that night. I moved to a different city. I've tried to rebuild to convince myself I'm still alive, but the scars never healed. Some nights, I still wake to whispers. My name, breathed faintly through the dark. Sometimes, in the bathroom mirror, I catch her reflection behind me, watching. And every once in a while, when I come home from work, there's a folded note waiting at my door. Always the same words. Our home. I'll never know if it's Rachel's ghost or just my guilt made flesh. But I do know this. I once believed betrayal was the worst kind of horror a man could face. I was wrong. Because betrayal doesn't just haunt you in life, it follows you after. I never imagined I'd be the kind of man telling a story like this. If you asked anyone who knew me back then, they'd tell you I was predictable, safe in every sense of the word. The kind of guy who always took the long way around trouble, who lived for routine. A steady presence. Chaos wasn't something I invited into my life. But here's the thing. Life doesn't care how steady you are. Normal isn't armor. It doesn't shield you from betrayal or from horror. My name is Daniel Hartman. I grew up in Hartford, Connecticut. My parents were old-fashioned in the best and hardest ways. Married 45 years, never wavering, loyal down to the bone. That was the picture of love etched into my head. I believed in it fully. When you found the right person, I thought, everything else aligned. No cracks, no doubts, just two people moving forward through the world as a team. I met Rachel in college. She wasn't the loudest girl at parties, wasn't the type who pulled focus, but she carried a warmth that reached you before she even spoke. The kind of person who could lower my pulse just by walking into the room when I was spiraling before an exam. She was steady, nurturing. She was the kind of woman you brought home to your parents, and the second she shook your mom's hand, you knew she'd already started imagining the wedding. My mom really did. By 28, Rachel and I were married. We bought a modest little house on a quiet street in West Hartford. Just enough space for the two of us, maybe a kid down the line. I worked long hours as a financial analyst while Rachel taught elementary school. Life was predictable. Life was safe. Exactly what I thought I wanted. But looking back, maybe safe was also dangerous. Safe let me believe nothing could touch us. Safe kept me blind when the cracks started to form. It began subtly. Rachel grew glued to her phone, tilting the screen away when I passed by, claiming she was answering emails or checking lesson plans. She started staying late at school, always grading papers. I believed her, or maybe I chose to, but there were nights I sat on the couch with a beer, staring at the clock as it slid past midnight, a hollow ache blooming in my stomach. One night I tried to make light of it, half joking, half testing the waters. "Babe, with all these late nights, you got a secret second family or something?" She froze, just for a second, before forcing out a laugh. "Yeah, Daniel, you caught me. Whole other husband and kids, you're too sharp." We laughed, but the sound stuck in my throat. Her tone hadn't been playful. It had been defensive. That moment stayed with me, gnawing. The real unraveling came on a freezing Friday night in December. I'd just finished one of the worst weeks of my career. All I wanted was to come home, order pizza, collapse on the couch with her, maybe watch some dumb holiday movie we'd seen 100 times. But when I opened the front door, the house was dark, empty. I texted her. Me. "Hey, where are you?" "Got pizza." Rachel. "Still at school. Big project. Don't wait up." That pit in my stomach hardened into something else, something sharp, insistent. A whisper in my head. "Go check. Find out for yourself." So I did. I drove to her school, parked across the street, engine off, breath fogging the glass. The building sat in darkness. No classrooms lit, no staff cars in the lot, just one silver Honda. Rachel's. I waited, fingers trembling against the steering wheel. Minutes dragged like hours. Then the side door opened. She stepped out. Not alone. A man walked beside her, tall, dark jacket. He leaned in close, his head bowed toward hers, as if whispering secrets meant only for her. She laughed. She touched his arm. Then, God help me, they kissed. My whole body went cold. I don't even remember the drive home, just the blur of rage and disbelief. I sat in the driveway for half an hour, knuckles white on the wheel, trying to breathe through the storm inside me. When Rachel finally came home, I was waiting in the kitchen. "Long night grading papers?" I asked, voice tight, words sharp enough to cut. She stopped short, startled. Then her face hardened into annoyance. "Daniel, don't start. I'm exhausted," I snapped. "Don't lie to me. I saw you at the school with him." The blood drained from her face. For a split second, I thought she'd break, cry, confess, beg for forgiveness. Instead, something in her shifted. Her eyes went flat, her voice cold. "So what if you did?" she said. That hit harder than the betrayal itself. No denial, no shame, just a wall of indifference. "You've been sneaking around behind my back for how long?" I demanded, my voice raw and shaking. Rachel stared at me in silence, and that silence cut deeper than any confession could have. We fought for hours that night. I shouted until my throat burned. She cried, then screamed back until her face was blotchy with rage. Everything I thought was solid in my life cracked apart right there in our kitchen. Weeks bled into months filled with cold silences, separate bedrooms, arguments whispered late at night that always boiled into screaming matches. But here's the part no one believes when I tell it. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This wasn't lawyers and papers and moving boxes. This was where the horror began. It was late January when the first text came. An unknown number. "You don't know the whole truth." At first, I rolled my eyes, thought it was spam. But then another message buzzed in. "She isn't just cheating. She's planning something worse." My hands went cold. I stared at the screen, skin prickling with goosebumps. Who the hell was sending this? That night, while Rachel was in the shower, I did something I swore I'd never do. I unlocked her phone. Most of her messages with him were gone, carefully deleted, but not all. I scrolled until one short exchange froze my blood. Him. He won't see it coming. Rachel. I just need to get him out of the way. Out of the way. Those 4 words burned themselves into me. One night, after another brutal fight, Rachel announced she was staying with a friend for the weekend to cool off. I nodded like I didn't care, told her, "Do what you want." But I cared enough to follow. She drove west, past Canton, deeper into the woods, miles from anything. My pulse hammered as I tailed her headlights until she finally pulled up to a rundown cabin, isolated and half swallowed by trees. I parked back in the dark and watched. She went inside. A few minutes later, the man from the school arrived. I crept close enough to see through the cracked blinds. My chest tightened. They weren't just sleeping together. They were planning. Papers littered the table. Maps, notes, and something with my name scrawled across it. I stumbled back, my breath fogging in the frozen air, terrified. 2 weeks later, Rachel came to me calm, almost too calm. "Let's go for a walk," she said. "We need to talk, somewhere quiet." Every instinct in me screamed, "Don't go." But some pathetic, loyal part of me still wanted answers, still wanted her. We drove out near the same woods. Snow covered the ground, soft crunch beneath our boots as we walked deeper under the trees. The air stung my lungs. She stopped suddenly and turned toward me. Her eyes were flat, her face cold. "You should have just let it go, Daniel," she said softly. Before I could answer, I heard a branch snap behind me. He stepped out from the trees. The man, rope coiled in his hand. I bolted. My legs pumped harder than they ever had in my life. Branches whipped my face, snow sprayed behind me, my chest seared with fire. But fear pushed me on. Behind me, footsteps pounded. Rachel's voice cut through the night like a blade. "Don't let him get away." I stumbled, caught myself, and kept running. My vision blurred with tears and cold. Then, ahead, a cabin. Its door stood slightly open, yawning like it had been waiting for me. My gut twisted. Not again. Not their trap. I swerved away, plunging deeper into the endless trees. My legs gave out. My skull smashed against a trunk. Pain exploded white hot. Then blackness swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed. White walls, machines beeping softly. A doctor leaned over me. "You're lucky," he said. "Hit your head pretty bad. Some hikers found you by the roadside. You'll be okay." Roadside. The word echoed. My last memory was collapsing deep in the woods. How had I ended up on the roadside? Who carried me there? The police questioned me, but what could I say? That my wife had tried to lure me into the woods so her lover could strangle me with a rope? That I'd seen maps with my name scribbled on them? Without proof, they'd laugh me out of the station. Rachel never came to the hospital, not once. When I finally got home days later, her things were gone. No note, no goodbye, just emptiness. That was 6 months ago. The house is quiet now, but it isn't peace I feel here, it's something else. Nights drag long. The silence feels heavy, haunted. Not by ghosts, but by betrayal. Sometimes the texts still come. "She isn't finished. Watch your back." I don't know who's sending them. Maybe Rachel, maybe him, maybe someone else entirely. But every night, when I step outside, I feel eyes on me, like the woods followed me home. And sometimes, when I jolt awake in the dead of night, I hear the floorboards creak, slow, measured, as if she's come back, as if the plan isn't over. I was 34 when the truth began to settle in, that my marriage wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't some sudden, cinematic discovery. I didn't walk in on her tangled up with someone else in our bed. No, it happened in smaller ways, almost invisible at first. Subtle cracks forming, quiet inconsistencies that stacked on top of each other until one day, I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. My name is Darren Cole. I live in Ravenbrook, Ohio, the kind of city that doesn't make headlines unless a factory closes, or the university's football team somehow makes the playoffs. Rows of neighborhoods, a couple of chain restaurants pretending to be upscale, and gray skies that hang heavy most of the year. I'd grown up here, never really left, working as an IT technician at a logistics company. My life was a carousel of broken printers, frozen laptops, and the same coworkers telling the same tired jokes about forgetting their passwords. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid for rent, groceries, and the occasional vacation. And then there was Marissa Hale, my wife. We'd been married 6 years. To anyone on the outside, we probably looked steady. We shared a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the west side, with a small balcony I swore every spring I'd fill with plants but never did. We had a routine. Dinners at the table more often than not, movie nights on Fridays, and a trip once a year if the budget allowed. It looked like stability. But stability, I would learn, can be nothing more than camouflage. I started noticing changes in her before I admitted it to myself. The way her phone stayed face down on the coffee table, the vague answers about client dinners, the dresses appearing in her closet with price tags I knew her paycheck couldn't stretch to cover. At first, I swallowed it, forced myself to believe I was imagining things. My father had been the paranoid type, accusing my mother of affairs she never had, poisoning their marriage until nothing was left. I promised myself I'd never be him. So I told myself I was overthinking, that I was being insecure. For months I let the unease eat at me quietly. Then came the night I couldn't pretend anymore. A Friday in late autumn, the air sharp enough to burn in your lungs. Marissa said she had dinner with a client from out of town. I smiled, told her to enjoy herself, and ordered a pizza. Hours slipped by while I sat on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through Netflix menus. Midnight passed, then 1, then 2. My thumb hovered over my phone. "You good?" I finally texted. No reply. I called, straight to voicemail. It was almost 4 in the morning when the door finally clicked open. I was sitting at the kitchen table by then, the pizza congealed in its box. She stepped inside, smelling faintly of whiskey and cologne. Not mine. "Long dinner?" I asked. My voice came out softer than I intended. She froze, just for a second, then forced a laugh. "Yeah, sorry. Clients kept ordering rounds. Lost track of time. Her makeup was smeared at the edges, her hair just a little too tangled for what she claimed was only dinner. And then I noticed it, a faint streak of lipstick along her jawline. It wasn't her shade. "Marissa," I said slowly. "Who were you with?" Her eyes met mine only briefly before darting away. "I told you. Clients." I didn't push. I just nodded, pretending to accept it. "Right." That night she slipped into bed and was asleep within minutes, her breathing steady as if nothing had happened. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, every muscle wound tight, my chest aching with questions I couldn't ask. After that, I started watching more closely. Her phone buzzed constantly. She smiled at messages she never explained. She came home later and later, rushing straight to the shower with perfume clinging to her skin, a scent that didn't belong to her. The breaking point came on a Wednesday night. I left work early, telling my boss a server had crashed. Instead of driving home, I parked 3 blocks from her office. At 7:45, I saw her walk out. She wasn't alone. A tall man was beside her, sharply dressed, his hand brushing the small of her back in a way no colleague would. She laughed with him, that unguarded laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years. My heart hammered so loud I swore it would give me away. I didn't know his name then, Ethan Ward, but I would soon. They walked together to a wine bar on 8th Street. I stayed in my car, watching through the glowing windows. They sat close, their heads tilted toward each other like no one else existed. I watched him take her hand across the table, watched her lean in as though she belonged to him, not me. I wanted to storm inside, to drag her away, to scream, to tear apart the lie of our marriage right there in front of everyone. But I didn't. I sat in the driver's seat until my eyes blurred with tears I refused to let fall. When she came home that night just past 11, she kissed my cheek casually, asked if I'd eaten, and curled up beside me on the couch as if she hadn't just been with another man. I couldn't take it anymore. The questions, the suspicions, they were eating me alive. Over the next few days, I became someone I didn't recognize, someone I had always sworn I'd never be. I checked her emails when she carelessly left her laptop open. I rummaged through her purse while she showered, pretending to straighten up. I followed her car at a distance when she said she had late meetings, and what I uncovered stripped away any hope that I was wrong. Hotel receipts tucked into her bag, dinner bills for 2 at places we could never afford together, messages buried in her phone under a fake contact labeled work. It wasn't just an affair, it was structured, ongoing, woven into her life with precision. Planned dinners, regular hotel stays, intimacy measured out like appointments. When I finally confronted her, it was a Sunday evening. The sky outside was gray, rain smearing the windows. She was folding laundry on the couch, humming faintly to herself as if everything was normal. "Marissa," I said, my voice shaking. "How long?" She froze, a shirt half folded in her hands. "What do you mean? How long have you been seeing him?" Her hands trembled. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and startled, then narrowing with defense. "Who?" "Don't." My throat burned as the words scraped out. "Don't insult me. Ethan. The man from your office. The one you're screwing in hotels while I sit at home like a fool." The silence that followed was suffocating. My pulse roared in my ears, my chest tight. Finally, she whispered, 2 years. I swear something inside me cracked open then, something that would never close again. I wanted to scream, to tear the walls down, but all I could manage was a whisper. "Why?" Her eyes filled, her lip trembling. "I don't know, Darren. I don't know. I didn't plan this. I didn't mean to hurt you." But she had. She had carved a wound so deep there would be no healing. The weeks that followed were a fog. Every room in the apartment felt infected, her laugh echoing in the walls like a cruel ghost. Her scent on the sheets, her touch when she reached for me. It all turned to poison. She begged me to go to therapy, to salvage what was left. But how do you rebuild when the entire foundation is a lie? She hadn't just betrayed me. She had built an entire life I was never meant to see. And then the real nightmare began. At first I told myself it was stress, just my mind buckling under the weight. But the dreams grew darker. I'd wake in the night drenched in sweat, convinced I'd seen her standing at the foot of the bed. Her face was blank, her eyes hollow, whispering words I couldn't decipher. Sometimes, lying in the silence, I'd hear whispers in the walls, footsteps in the hallway outside our door when no one was there. I dismissed it as my imagination unraveling. But the more consumed I became by her betrayal, the worse it all got. One night I woke to the sound of Marissa's voice. She was talking low, almost tender, in the living room. I thought she was on the phone. But when I stumbled out of bed and walked in, the room was empty. Another night in our bedroom, I smelled it. Ethan's cologne. Sharp, musky, thick in the air, like he was standing right there beside me. He had never been inside our home. Yet the scent lingered. It was as if their affair had bled through the walls, taking on a form of its own, haunting me. The final straw came late one night. I woke to the crushing weight of something on my chest. I couldn't move, couldn't draw a breath. My eyes opened and she was there, Marissa, straddling me. But not the Marissa I knew. Her face twisted, her eyes pure black voids, her lips murmuring Ethan's name over and over in a cadence that rattled my bones. I screamed, and in that instant she was gone. Only the dark ceiling above me, my chest heaving as though I had barely escaped drowning. But the terror clung to me, as real as if it had happened. The next morning, I packed a bag and left. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town. I filed the papers. Marissa called, begged, sobbed into the phone, but I didn't go back. I couldn't. Even away from her, the haunting didn't stop. The nightmares followed. The whispers still curl through my apartment late at night. Sometimes I smell that cologne again, stronger than ever, clinging to the air until I gag. Sometimes I wake certain someone is in the room, standing just beyond the shadows. And sometimes I see her. Not Marissa as she was. No trace of warmth, no hint of the woman I married. But Marissa as she appeared that night in the nightmare. Hollow, empty. Her mouth shaping the same cursed name. I don't know if it's trauma festering inside me or if something darker clawed its way out of her betrayal and latched onto me. All I know is that betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It rearranges something inside you forever. And some nights when I'm lying awake in the suffocating silence, I wonder if I'll ever really be free, or if she and what she did will haunt me until the day I die. I never imagined my marriage would collapse the way it did. For most of my 20s, I thought I had life figured out. A stable job, a modest but comfortable house, and a wife I believed I could trust. My name is Daniel Hart. I grew up in a quiet Ohio town called Maplewood. My parents were hardworking people, my dad a mechanic, my mom a nurse, and they raised me with the values of honesty, loyalty, and family. I carried those values into my marriage with Claire. Claire and I met in college. She was the kind of person who made a room brighter just by stepping into it, outgoing, magnetic, quick with a laugh. I was the opposite, more reserved, practical, the type who preferred a quiet night with close friends over a crowded party. Somehow, we balanced each other. By graduation, we were engaged. A year later, we stood in front of our families and promised forever. At first, life was good. We both found steady jobs, Claire as a marketing consultant, me as an IT analyst. We bought a small home in Maplewood, not far from my parents, and soon after had 2 kids, Ethan and Lily. They became the center of my world. But if I'm honest, cracks in our marriage had always been there. Claire thrived on excitement, constantly chasing new faces, new thrills. I tried to keep up, but I wasn't built for it. When her friends introduced us to the swinging lifestyle, I convinced myself it might be the compromise to keep her happy without losing her. For a while, I pretended it worked. But inside I hated it. The intimacy shared with strangers. The thought of Claire forming connections with other men while I stood by. It gnawed at me until I finally told her I was done. That's when things truly fell apart. Claire grew cold, irritated by my refusal to keep up. She went out more often. Girls' night, work dinners, just need some air. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that she'd honor the line I had drawn. But I noticed things. The way she silenced her phone as soon as I walked in, the faint smell of cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her clothes, the late nights that turned into early mornings. One night I confronted her. I tried to stay calm. "Claire, are you seeing someone behind my back?" She laughed too quickly, her eyes flicking away. "Daniel, you're paranoid. Just because you've turned boring doesn't mean I have." Her words stung deep, but I swallowed them, telling myself I was imagining things. I didn't want to believe. 6 months before our divorce, everything shifted. Ethan, our oldest, was diagnosed with a life-threatening autoimmune condition. Overnight, our lives became hospitals, medications, and constant monitoring. I tried to rise to it, working full-time while managing bills, doctor visits, and the kids. Claire, though, buckled under the weight. She started drinking more. At first, just a glass of wine at night. Then bottles began disappearing. I came home early once and found her passed out on the couch, an empty bottle on the floor, while Lily, only 4 years old, was standing on a chair in the kitchen, trying to pour herself cereal for dinner. That sight broke me. That night, I packed bags, buckled Ethan and Lily into the car, and drove them to my parents' house. When I told Claire I was leaving for a while, she barely reacted. She waved me off with a bitter, "Fine, do whatever you want." For 2 weeks, I stayed with my parents, focused only on the kids and their routines. It was the calmest I'd felt in months. Then came a message that made my stomach twist. It was from Amy, Claire's best friend since high school. "Daniel, I think you need to know what's been going on. Claire told us some things at girls' night. I can't sit on this anymore." I called her immediately. Amy's voice was low, hesitant. "She's been bragging about sleeping with different guys every night. She drinks when she's supposed to have the kids. Daniel, she even admitted she left Ethan and Lily home alone once so she could meet a guy at a bar." I couldn't keep quiet anymore. The words hollowed me out. My stomach dropped like stone. "You're serious?" I asked, my voice flat, almost strangled. "I wish I wasn't," Amy whispered. "She also told us she plans to file for divorce once she drains more money from you. She said, and I swear she used these exact words, 'Why rush when I can live rent-free and still spend his cash?'" I sat there in silence, the phone pressed against my ear, my knuckles white from gripping it. Every suspicion I had buried, every fear I had tried to swallow, was suddenly laid bare in the ugliest way possible. Amy's voice wavered. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I know this isn't easy to hear." I drew in a long breath, forcing my voice steady. "Thank you, Amy. You just gave me what I needed to end this once and for all." The next day, I moved back into the house. If Claire was going to try and bleed me dry, I wasn't going to let her do it while I sat in exile. When I dropped my bag on the bed, Claire stormed in, eyes flashing. "What the hell are you doing here?" she snapped. "This is my house too," I said evenly. "And I'm not leaving my kids here alone with you anymore." Her face twisted with rage. "Get out, Daniel. I mean it. I'll call the cops if I have to." "Go ahead," I muttered, my phone already recording from my pocket. She grabbed her phone and, with trembling hands, dialed 911. Her voice shifted instantly, trembling with practiced fear. "Yes, I'd like to report domestic violence," she said, tears suddenly in her voice. Minutes later, red and blue lights strobed against the walls. 2 officers came inside, one immediately cuffing me, as Claire stood behind them with wide, tearful eyes. "This man's been abusive," she sobbed. But when the detective pulled me aside, I spoke quietly. "I have the whole thing recorded. She's lying. I played the audio. I watched the detective's expression shift, his jaw tightening as the truth sunk in. Within an hour, it was Claire sitting in the back of the squad car, handcuffed, her fake tears gone. That night marked the turning point. Claire wasn't allowed back in the house for a week. She stayed at Amy's place, but instead of reflecting, she went on a spree. New laptop, new iPhone, designer clothes. She drained our joint account with zero hesitation. When I saw the balance, my stomach turned. The next morning, I went to the bank. I emptied what was left in savings, closed the joint credit cards, and transferred my investments into my name alone. When Claire found out, my phone exploded with messages. "You bastard. How dare you cut me off? You'll regret this. I swear to God, Daniel, you'll pay for what you've done to me." But the more she raged, the clearer it became. She wasn't in control anymore. A few days later, Amy called again. Her voice was uneasy. "Daniel, she's not doing well. She told me she's thinking of ending her life." I froze, bile rising in my throat. As much as I despised her, I didn't want my kid's mother dead. Amy talked her into checking into an inpatient mental health facility, and to my surprise, Claire agreed. Maybe she knew she needed help, or maybe she just wanted pity. Either way, it worked in my favor. It proved she was unstable and unfit to care for the kids alone. 2 weeks later, the divorce hearing began. Claire walked in looking polished, sober, ready to perform. On the stand, she wept, telling the judge I was abusive, controlling, that my cruelty had driven her to a mental hospital. For a moment, I feared the judge might believe her. But then it was my turn. My attorney laid out everything: the recordings, the bank statements, the police report. Piece by piece, Claire's story unraveled. The final blow came when Amy took the stand. Her voice was steady, her gaze locked on Claire. I watched her spiral. I watched her leave her kids home alone so she could drink and hook up with strangers. She bragged about it. I begged her to stop, but she wouldn't. Daniel isn't perfect, but he's the only stable parent those kids have. Claire sat frozen, mouth half open, her attorney flipping through notes like a drowning man grasping for air. When the dust settled, the judge ruled in my favor. Sole custody granted to me. Claire restricted to supervised visitation until she completed rehab and counseling. I kept the house. I kept my investments. Most importantly, I kept my children safe. It's been 5 years since that day in court. Claire eventually sobered up. She still sees Ethan and Lily, but only under the strict limits of the visitation schedule. As for me, I finally have peace. Ethan's health has stabilized with treatment. Lily is growing into a bright, confident girl. And me, I no longer wake up wondering what lie will unravel my life today. Sometimes late at night, I think back to the man I used to be. The man who thought swinging would save his marriage. The man who forgave the unforgivable just to keep the illusion alive. I don't recognize him anymore. What I do know is this: walking away saved my kids, and it saved me. And I will never apologize for that. I never thought the word forever could collapse in the span of a heartbeat. My name's Adrian Walker. I'm 34. If you'd asked anyone who knew me a few years back, they would have told you I was the guy who had it figured out. A steady job, a wife I swore I'd grow old with, 2 kids who lit up my world, and a modest home tucked on the quieter side of Lexington, Kentucky. On the outside, it looked steady. But the truth is, the cracks had been spreading long before anyone noticed. I grew up in a working-class family where life was more about endurance than ease. My dad drove trucks, gone for days at a time, while my mom pulled endless double shifts as a nurse. They weren't warm in the Hallmark way, but they loved me the only way they knew, by keeping food on the table and reminding me that responsibility wasn't optional. Work hard, don't run. That's what they drilled into me, and it stuck. Maybe that's why I fell so hard for Samantha. She was nothing like me. I was quiet, cautious, always thinking twice. She was bold, impulsive, reckless in ways that made people lean in when she entered a room. I met her when I was 25, at a cookout hosted by mutual friends. She had this way of pulling the air toward her, like the rest of us were background noise. When she laughed at some dumb joke I made about burning hot dogs, I swear it felt like the ground tilted beneath me. Everyone warned me. Caleb, my best friend, said it first. "Man, Sam's fun, but she doesn't do settled. You're the rock type. She'll get bored." I waved him off. "You don't know her like I do." 2 years later, I married her. It wasn't some fairy tale wedding, just a courthouse ceremony followed by a reception at a rented hall strung with cheap lights and stocked with cheaper beer. It didn't matter. To me, it was perfect. We scraped together enough for a starter home, 2 bedrooms, a driveway cracked like dry earth, paint peeling from the shutters. None of it bothered me. I thought we were building something solid. When Eli was born, I felt like we'd crossed some invisible finish line. That moment couples talk about, when life just clicks into place. I thought we'd found it. Maya came 3 years later, and though I was bone-tired most days, I felt whole. Every morning I woke knowing exactly who I was living for. But Samantha, she shifted. At first I chalked it up to the grind. 2 kids, bills stacking higher, my long hours at the firm. She complained I wasn't fun anymore, that all I cared about was work and responsibilities. I let it roll off, telling myself it was just a phase. Then Eli got sick. He was 6 when the doctors told us he had a rare autoimmune disorder. News like that doesn't land softly. It smashes into you like a freight train. Suddenly our days were doctor visits, medications, sleepless nights listening for every shaky breath. I threw myself into being steady, because what else could I do? But Samantha didn't. Her glass of wine after work became half a bottle. Weekends with friends stretched until 2 a.m., and she'd stumble in reeking of cigarette smoke and perfume that wasn't hers. I'd ask where she'd been, and she'd snap. "Don't start, Adrian. You think you've got it all figured out because you bring home a neat little paycheck? You have no idea what it's like being trapped here all day." Trapped. That word buried itself in me. She wasn't talking about Eli's illness. She was talking about me, about us. I tried to rationalize it, told myself she was overwhelmed, that she just needed space. But deep down, I knew. It started small. The way she angled her phone away when texting, the sudden passcode, when before she never cared. One night she fell asleep on the couch, her phone buzzing on the table beside her. My chest locked up as I stared at it. I told myself to respect her privacy, but my hands betrayed me. The screen lit up. Can't stop thinking about last night. My stomach dropped. The number wasn't saved, just a string of digits. My hands trembled as I scrolled back. Flirty texts, late-night confessions, words that scorched my eyes, and then the one that carved itself into me. "When are you leaving him?" I sat frozen, vision blurring, body gone ice cold. I didn't confront her that night. Some part of me clung to denial, to the hope that it was a mistake, a sick joke. But a week later, my doubts died. Samantha told me she was going out with her friend Heather. Her voice was casual, too casual. I mentioned it to Caleb. He didn't even hesitate. "Man, you already know. Stop waiting for her to confess. You want the truth? Follow her." I hated that suggestion. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband sneaking around like some cliché. But desperation strips you down. It makes you cross lines you swore you'd never touch. So that Saturday night, after Samantha left, I slid into my car and tailed her at a distance, my palms slick on the steering wheel. She didn't head to Heather's. She didn't even slow down near the bars she liked. Instead, she turned off the highway and pulled into the lot of a rundown motel, the kind with buzzing neon letters that never fully lit up. I parked in the shadows, heart pounding as I watched her step out of the car. She smoothed her dress like a nervous teenager, then lifted her eyes just in time to meet a man climbing out of a black truck. He was taller than me, broader, carrying that smug ease men get when they know they're trouble. And Samantha, my wife, the mother of my children, ran to him, arms open like she'd been waiting her whole life. Their mouths collided. Watching it, I felt something rip inside me, like fabric tearing. I stayed in that car nearly an hour, numb, staring at the motel sign as it flickered vacancy into the night. When she finally reappeared, her hair was tousled, lipstick smeared, her laugh cutting sharp against the hum of traffic. Not a laugh I'd heard in years, and it wasn't mine she gave it to. When she came home, I was waiting in the kitchen, lights off, the room heavy with silence. She jumped when she saw me. "Jesus, Adrian, you scared me. What are you doing up?" I stared through her. My voice came out hollow. "Who is he?" Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, shut it, then tried for a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me, Sam. I followed you." The silence that fell after that was louder than any scream. She knew. I knew. And there was no way to take it back. Finally, she whispered, "His name's Tyler." My chest caved. "How long?" "Almost a year." "A year?" While I was clocking double shifts to cover hospital bills. While I sat beside our son praying for steady breaths. She was sneaking off to motel rooms with him. I slammed my fist against the table. She flinched. "You destroyed this family for him." Her eyes hardened. The guilt vanished, replaced by fire. "Don't you dare put this all on me. You checked out a long time ago, Adrian. Buried yourself in work and bills and being the responsible one. You left me here alone. Tyler makes me feel alive again." Alive. The word twisted inside me, sharp as glass. I wish I could say I threw her out right then. But I didn't. Some pathetic part of me still loved her, still clung to the hope we could patch it together. For Eli, for Maya. We tried counseling. It was a joke. She sat there, arms crossed, lips pressed thin, while I begged for scraps of a marriage. Her heart was already gone. Then it got darker. One night I came home early and found Eli curled up in his room, tears streaking his cheeks. "Mommy's with her friend again," he whispered. "She forgot to give me my medicine." That broke something in me clean through. Eli's health wasn't negotiable. I confronted her that night, no hesitation left in me. "You're done, Sam. I want you out tomorrow." She sneered, eyes glinting. "You think you can just kick me out? This is my house too, and don't forget, I can take the kids." That threat froze my blood. She wasn't just reckless, she was dangerous. A week later, I came home from work and stepped into chaos. Dishes shattered across the floor, drawers hanging open, chairs overturned, and standing in the middle of it all was Tyler, shirt half unbuttoned, reeking of beer, swaying on his feet. "She told me you'd be at work," he slurred. "Get the hell out of my house," I snapped. He laughed, a sound that curdled. "Your house? Buddy, she's done with you. She's mine now." Before I could respond, Samantha stumbled in from the kitchen, drunk and glassy-eyed. "Adrian, don't make this worse. Just leave us alone." My stomach turned. My wife, in my house, asking me to leave them alone. And my kids were upstairs. That's when Tyler lunged. He shoved me hard, slammed me into the wall. My vision swam. Caleb's voice flashed in my head. "Stop waiting for her to confess. You already know." I staggered to the back door, grabbed the baseball bat I kept there. I didn't swing it, but I held it tight, leveling it between us. "Get out!" Tyler sneered, but something in my stance must have registered. He yanked Samantha by the arm, and together they stumbled into the night. The next morning, I filed for divorce. The custody battle nearly broke me. Samantha painted me as cold, controlling, absent, but the evidence, her drinking, the affair, neglecting Eli's care, was stacked on my side. In the end, I got primary custody. Samantha unraveled after Tyler dropped her. Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents out of state. I haven't seen her in over a year. The kids are adjusting. It's messy, but we're surviving. Eli still asks about his mom sometimes, and I fumble for words I don't have. Maya clings closer now. We're healing, slowly. But some nights, when the house is quiet, I sit alone in the dark and replay it all. The buzzing motel sign, the text messages, her laughter echoing for someone else. And I wonder how love can rot into something so cruel. I was 32 when I learned the truth about my wife. Not in some explosive cinematic moment where I walked in on her tangled in sheets with another man, but in a way that was far worse, slow, deliberate, a suspicion that bled into everything until it felt like a rope around my throat, tightening every time she smiled at her phone or came home late. Her name is Melissa, though everyone calls her Mel. We'd been married 7 years, together almost a decade. She was radiant in a way that made people notice when she entered a room. Long chestnut hair, those hazel eyes that shifted from green to gold depending on the light, and a sharp wit that used to leave me doubled over in laughter. She was the person who once made the world feel easy. We met in college at a small university in Dayton. I was a business major, she studied graphic design. She was sitting in a coffee shop sketching when I asked if I could borrow her pencil. I didn't need it, I just wanted an excuse. That one line sparked a night-long conversation, both of us lingering until the baristas swept crumbs off tables and locked the doors. By sunrise, I knew I wanted to marry her. For years, life with her felt like exactly what I'd hoped. Solid, warm, like home. But cracks don't show up overnight. They creep. At first, it was little things. She stayed late at work. She smiled down at her phone and tucked it away quickly. At dinner, her eyes drifted somewhere far away even while she sat across from me. I told myself I was paranoid, that she was stressed, but in the pit of my gut, I already knew. About 6 months before the end, I finally asked her outright. We were on the couch. The TV was on mute, filling the room with shifting light. She scrolled on her phone, thumb flicking, barely present. "Who are you texting?" I asked. Her glance was quick, almost rehearsed. "Work stuff." "At 11 at night?" She didn't flinch. "Deadlines don't care what time it is." Her voice was flat, humorless. No smile, no teasing defense, just a wall of coldness. I saw her jaw tighten, her shoulders stiffen like she was bracing for a fight. I almost pushed harder, but instead I swallowed it. I told myself not to start something. That was my mistake. By the time half a year passed, I had all the proof I needed, little fragments that added up like shards of glass cutting deeper each time I touched them. A receipt in her purse from a bar across town, lipstick smeared across the corner, a men's hoodie crumpled in the backseat of her car, the way she'd head straight into the shower after coming home late, like she was rinsing off guilt before I could smell it. I had two choices, confront her or find the truth for myself. I chose the second. I wish I hadn't. It was a Friday night in mid-November. She told me she had a late meeting with a client, some brainstorming session. I kissed her cheek, told her to have fun, and then waited until she left. 10 minutes later, I slipped out, keys clenched in my fist, heart racing so violently I could hear blood rushing in my ears. I followed her from a distance, headlights dimmed, counting cars between us. She didn't head to the office. She drove across town into an area I didn't recognize, past pawn shops and shuttered storefronts until she pulled into a narrow parking lot. The sign above the building flickered. The lantern. A dive bar wedged between two pawn shops, neon buzzing like an insect. I parked a block away, sat in the dark, and watched. That's when I saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, his hair a vivid red that glowed even under the sickly streetlight. He leaned casually against the entrance, arms folded like he belonged to the night. The second Mel stepped out of her car, he wrapped his arms around her waist and kissed her. My chest caved in. The air left me. That was my wife, my Mel, kissing him the way she used to kiss me. My best friend, my safe place. I should have stormed over. I should have dragged her out of there, demanded answers, ended it all on the spot. But I didn't. I froze. Like a coward. I just watched. They went inside. I followed. The lantern was dim and loud, music pounding, laughter echoing, glasses clinking against wood. I slid into a booth near the back where I could see them without being seen. Mel and the red-haired man, Derek, I later learned his name, sat at the bar. She ordered drinks. Her laugh carried across the room, too bright, too forced, dripping with flirtation. He leaned close, his lips brushing her ear as he whispered. And then something caught me off guard. I expected her to sip on one drink, maybe two, careful and discreet. But she didn't. She ordered again and again, drinks for him, for herself, even for strangers nearby, her laughter growing louder with each glass. I sat there, hidden in the shadows, watching the woman I thought I knew unravel right in front of me. She was buying rounds like she owned the place. Shots for strangers, beers for the bartender, whiskey for Derek. Her laugh carrying over the music, sharp and manic. I sat there watching, sick to my stomach, thinking about the arguments we'd had over unpaid bills, the late notices piling up on our kitchen counter. We'd fought about groceries, about gas money, but here she was throwing drinks at anyone who smiled her way. It didn't add up. At one point she swiveled on her bar stool, scanning the room. Her eyes locked with mine and my heart seized. For a split second I thought she'd caught me, knew I was there. But then her gaze slid right past me to a baby-faced kid barely old enough to be in the bar. She flashed him that radiant, disarming smile, the same one that once made me fall in love, and lifted her glass toward him. "Shot?" she mouthed. The boy's friend shook his head, trying to pull him away, but Derek was already draping an arm across the kid's shoulders, and Melissa leaned in close, whispering, stroking his arm, laughing like she'd known him her whole life. It wasn't flirting, it was feeding. That was the moment it hit me. She wasn't just cheating, she was hunting. The kid hesitated, nervous but eager, soaking up her attention like it was oxygen. His friend tried again, tugging his sleeve. Melissa glanced at the friend, eyes glinting, and said sweetly, "You can come too if you want." Her tone was velvet and venom all at once. My gut twisted. This wasn't about sex or betrayal. This was something darker, something I couldn't explain. Every instinct screamed at me to stand, to shout, to drag them out of that bar. But my legs wouldn't move. I sat there like I was nailed to the booth, heart pounding, mouth dry, watching them reel the boys in like prey. They left together, Melissa, Derek, and the two kids. I staggered after them, careful to keep my distance. Melissa's car waited at the curb. Derek took the wheel. The boys stumbled into the back seat, Melissa sliding in beside them, her arm draped casually across their shoulders. I followed as they wound through dark back roads away from downtown, past shuttered gas stations and fields of skeletal trees, until they stopped in front of a sagging house at the edge of town. Paint peeled from the siding. A porch light flickered weakly. My stomach knotted. I killed my engine and sat in the dark, watching. Melissa led the boys inside. Derek locked the door behind them. For a moment, nothing. Silence. Then shadows began moving behind the blinds. Voices carried through the night, muffled laughter, a man's strained shout, something heavy hitting the floor with a dull, sick thud. My skin crawled. I knew, if I went in there, I'd never come back out. Still, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles burned white, telling myself to move, to do something, but I couldn't. Fear pinned me to the seat. After what felt like hours, the door opened. Melissa stepped out first. Her hair was mussed, her lipstick smeared into a jagged red slash. Behind her, Derek emerged carrying something heavy bundled in a dark blanket. They hauled it to the trunk, shoved it inside, and slammed it shut. I sat frozen, pulse hammering in my ears, until the glow of their tail lights vanished into the night. Then I stumbled out, legs weak, and crept toward the house. The door hung unlocked. Inside, the air stank of spilled liquor and iron. The living room was chaos. Chairs overturned, bottles shattered, a streak of red smeared across the floorboards. My heart lurched into my throat. I couldn't go farther. I bolted. That night I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile, heard her laugh, watched Derek heft that blanket like cargo. And then morning came. She walked in like nothing had happened, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted pancakes. Pancakes. I stared at her, numb, trying to reconcile the woman pouring coffee in my kitchen with the one I'd watched lure boys to their deaths hours earlier. That's when I understood. If I told anyone, no one would believe me. She was perfect. She was charming. Everyone loved Mel. To them, I was just the paranoid husband clinging to a crumbling marriage. So I said nothing. Weeks turned into months. She kept sneaking out, kept flashing that smile at strangers, kept bringing people close. I never saw her kill, never saw the blood on her hands, but I saw enough to know. And the worst part? I still loved her. It's been 2 years. We're divorced now. I couldn't stay, couldn't watch. But sometimes, late at night, I scroll through the news. A missing college kid. A woman who went out for drinks and never came home. A young man last seen at a bar. Every headline drags me back to that night, to her laughter, to that blanket in the trunk. And every time, I see Melissa's smile. I don't know why I'm writing this, maybe because I need someone, anyone, to believe me. Maybe because if something happens to me, I want the truth to be out there. Melissa, my wife, the woman I loved, the woman who hunts. I never imagined my marriage would unravel into something that felt like a nightmare. For years, I believed Sophie and I had what other couples secretly envied. Friends used to call us solid. We had a modest 2-bedroom house in the suburbs outside Seattle, the kind with a yard just big enough for barbecues and summer evenings with neighbors. Our lives were steady, good careers, a reliable rhythm, a circle of friends we'd built together. And then there was Milo, our clumsy Labrador who somehow made the house feel complete. I was 31, working as an engineer for a logistics firm. Sophie was 29, doing marketing for a mid-sized tech company downtown. We'd been married 6 years. Sure, we had arguments, but nothing that felt catastrophic. Nothing that hinted at a fault line deep beneath the surface. But I guess cracks don't show themselves until the whole structure shifts. And by then, it's too late. It started with things so small I almost didn't notice. Sophie had always been transparent, almost disarmingly so. She'd leave her phone on the counter while showering, unlocked, never caring if I glanced at it. But that changed. Slowly at first. She began carrying it everywhere, keeping it face down, tilting the screen if I walked by. At first, I told myself it was nothing. We were both stressed. Deadlines, late nights, the usual. Maybe she just wanted space. But then came the excuses. Late dinners with clients. Networking events. Last-minute meetings. Each one stretched later into the night. One Tuesday, she stumbled in just before midnight, the sharp scent of wine trailing her. I was at the kitchen table, still awake, fingers tapping against a cold mug of coffee. "You're late," I said, trying not to let the edge creep into my voice. She dropped her purse by the door without looking at me. "Work ran long, I told you. You said you'd be home by 9. Her jaw tensed, and her eyes flicked toward me, sharp. "Ethan, not everything runs on your damn schedule. You of all people should know that." I bit back the instinct to argue. The silence that followed sat heavy, thick, and in my gut something shifted. The weeks that followed only sharpened my unease. Sophie was glued to her phone, thumb flying, eyes sparkling at jokes or messages she never shared. When I'd ask, she'd wave me off. Our conversations became shallow, just groceries, errands, bills, like we were roommates instead of a married couple. Then came the Saturday morning. She was in the shower when her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up. Damon Cole. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Because when she came out, towel wrapped around her, and snatched it up without a word, the guilt was written all over her face. Suspicion is poison. It seeps into your veins, eats away at you, keeps you awake with thoughts you don't want to have. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking, but my gut wouldn't let it go. So one Friday, when she said she had another client dinner, I followed her. I parked a few blocks from her office and waited. At 7 p.m., she walked out, not toward the garage where she usually parked, but across the street to a sleek black sedan idling under a streetlight. The driver stepped out, mid-40s, polished suit, the kind of man who exuded control without even trying. He opened the door for her. Sophie leaned in, kissed his cheek, and slipped inside. My chest tightened so violently I thought I might pass out. I trailed them to a quiet waterfront restaurant. From across the street in my car, I watched through the glass windows as they leaned close, laughed over candlelight, touched hands across the table. It looked like a scene ripped straight from a romance film, except I wasn't watching strangers. I was watching my wife. That night I sat in the dark living room, waiting. When she finally walked in, keys jingling, I spoke before she could flip on the light. How was the client dinner? My voice was steady, too steady. She froze, her silhouette rigid by the door. It was fine. Why? I stood. Who's Damen? Her face drained of color so fast it was like watching life leave her. She opened her mouth, stammered. He's just a colleague. I saw you, Sophie, at the restaurant, laughing, holding his hand. My voice cracked. Don't lie to me. Her eyes welled, but not with guilt or remorse. They were angry tears, defensive. You don't get it, Ethan, she snapped. You're always buried in work, always tired. Damen listens. He makes me feel alive. Do you know what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage? My blood boiled, every nerve vibrating with rage. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to shatter every fragile thing in that room. But all I could do was stand there, fists clenched, while everything I thought I knew about my life burned down in front of me. Instead, I whispered, my throat raw. So your answer was to crawl into another man's bed? Sophie's eyes dropped to the floor. She didn't argue. She didn't even try. And in that silence, something inside me collapsed. I knew. Our marriage wasn't wounded. It was dead. Divorce would have been brutal, but at least it would have been clean. Unfortunately, Damen Cole wasn't just a fling she'd eventually cut ties with. He was something darker, a shadow that clung, that refused to let go. At first it was subtle. A car idling too long across the street, headlights off. A figure in the grocery store aisle who vanished the second I looked up. One evening, I pulled into the driveway and saw cigarette butts scattered near the garage. Neither Sophie nor I smoked. I confronted her in the kitchen, slamming the drawer shut harder than I meant to. Does Damien know where we live? She froze. I might have mentioned it. Might have mentioned it, I snapped. Or did you bring him here? Her silence stretched long enough to answer for her. You let him into our home. Her voice cracked. It wasn't like that. He wanted to see where I lived. He cares about me. Cares? My voice rose, sharp, bitter. He's stalking us, Sophie. He's circling this house at night. That's not caring, that's obsession. For the first time I saw it, a flicker of fear in her eyes. But fear didn't stop her. She didn't leave him. 2 weeks later, at 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of the back door handle rattling. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the bed and crept into the kitchen. The door handle was jerking, violently, like someone was seconds away from breaking through. Who's there? My voice shook, but I forced it out. The rattling stopped. Silence pressed in. Then through the door came a voice, low, calm, deliberate. "She doesn't love you anymore, Ethan. Let her go, before I make you." The blood in my veins turned to ice. I knew that voice. Damien. I called the police, hands trembling. But by the time they arrived, the night was still, the driveway empty. When I told Sophie, she shook her head, her voice flat. "Damien would never do that. You're just paranoid." Paranoid. That word echoed through me like a curse. But paranoia doesn't leave notes tucked under your windshield wiper that read, "She's mine now." That was when I filed for divorce. Sophie moved out, taking Milo with her. I told myself that cutting ties would be the end of it, but it wasn't. It only unleashed something worse. Damien escalated, blocked number calls in the middle of the night, just heavy breathing, then a click. Voicemails whispering, "You'll never keep her away from me." I'd find footprints in the morning dew across the hood of my car, smudged handprints on the windows. Once I jolted awake to the sound of my name whispered right outside the bedroom glass. The police took reports but offered little else. One officer muttered under his breath, "Restraining orders don't stop men like him." And I believed him. The night it came to a head, I was alone. The divorce had finalized just a week earlier. Sophie was gone for good, though sometimes I still caught myself straining for the sound of her footsteps in the hall. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A single text. "Look outside." My throat went dry. Slowly, I pulled back the curtain. He was there. Damien, standing under the street lamp across the road, not hiding, not rushing, just smiling at me, calm, patient, like he had all the time in the world. Another text followed. She told me everything. "You don't deserve to breathe the same air she does." Panic surged. I locked every door, every window, fingers shaking as I dialed 911. By the time the squad car pulled up, the street was empty. Damien was gone. Gone, but not gone. Because after that night, the messages didn't stop. The blocked calls, the voicemails, the reminders that he was still out there. Even now, 10 years later, living on the other side of the country with a new wife, a new house, a new life, I freeze every time my phone rings from an unknown number. Because deep down, I know the truth. Dom Cole is still out there watching, waiting, and one day I fear he'll step out of the shadows again. I was 34 when the truth cracked my world open. My name's Ryan Mercer. I grew up in a mid-sized city in Ohio, one of those places that tries to pretend it's bigger than it is. Not small enough to be quiet, not big enough to get lost. People knew your name, your parents, your business, even when you wanted them to stay out of it. After college, I landed a job as a logistics manager at a distribution center. Nothing flashy. I wasn't changing the world. But it paid well, and it was dependable. That was what mattered most to me. Dependability. My life philosophy was simple. Steady is safe. I was 26 when I met Claire. She worked part-time at this coffee shop down the street from my office. She had blonde hair, sharp green eyes, and a smile that made strangers feel like they were already her friends. I was never the type to strike up conversations with women. But Claire had this energy that pulled words out of me, like she gave me permission to be more than the quiet guy in the corner. 2 years of dating turned into a wedding. Nothing extravagant, just a small gathering of family, vows exchanged under a rented gazebo, the kind of day that felt like ours and no one else's. A few months later, we bought a townhouse together. We built a life. Not exciting, not chaotic, just ours. Sunday mornings with coffee and newspapers spread across the table. Rainy nights spent curled up on the couch binge-watching shows, talking about vacations we never seemed to take. My parents adored her. My friends said we were the stable couple, the ones who'd figured it out while everyone else stumbled through dating apps and breakups. But if I'm being brutally honest, the cracks started showing about a year ago. Claire got a new job at a marketing firm downtown. She'd always worked odd hours, but now she was coming home late every night, sometimes close to midnight. Her phone never left her hand, always flipped face down on the counter. She changed the way she dressed, started wearing sharper clothes, more makeup, spritzing on perfume even for a long day at the office. She went out with coworkers more often. At first, I tried to swallow the paranoia. She was ambitious, I told myself. She wanted a career to be proud of, and I wanted to support her. But the little things, the tiny invisible cuts, started to add up. Questions answered with silence, eye contact avoided. "Who are you texting?" I'd ask casually. She'd shrug. "Work. End of discussion." One night, I couldn't bury it anymore. She came home around 11, smelling faintly of alcohol and a perfume that wasn't hers. I stood in the kitchen, my hands gripping the counter. "Claire," I said quietly, steadying my voice. "We need to talk." She dropped her purse with a dull thud, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Not tonight, Ryan. Please. I've had a long day." "That's every night lately." "Where were you?" "With coworkers," she muttered, already kicking off her heels and heading for the stairs. "Don't make this a thing. Don't make this a thing." She said it like she could will the suspicion out of existence. But it was already a thing. While she showered that night, I did something I'd sworn I'd never do. I opened her purse. My chest was pounding so hard I thought she'd hear it over the running water. And there it was, a crumpled receipt from a hotel bar across town. 2 cocktails, 2 nights ago. The same night she told me she was working late. My throat closed. I wanted to march upstairs, hold it up to her face, demand the truth. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed to be sure. Over the next week, I watched. Really watched. Her phone always within reach, screen flipping down the second I walked into the room. One evening, while she was in the shower again, I picked it up. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped it. No password. The screen lit up. Messages. Dozens, then hundreds. Scrolling and scrolling until my stomach churned. Him. "Same time tomorrow. I can't stop thinking about last night." Her. "Me too. I'll say I'm stuck at work again." Him. "You're incredible, Claire." Her. "Don't say that." Her replies, his replies, intimate moments I wasn't supposed to see. The name was saved as Elliot Work. A quick search on her company's website confirmed it. Elliot, senior manager. My ears rang. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, dripping onto the phone. A few minutes later, she stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped tight around her, humming like life was perfectly normal. She smiled when she saw me, casual, unburdened. I couldn't look at her. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I'd be sick. I wish I could say I confronted her right then, that I demanded the truth. But I didn't. I just sat there, phone still in my hand, and the silence between us was louder than anything I could have said. Instead, I spent my nights lying rigid in bed, staring at the ceiling as the fan ticked above me, listening to Claire's steady breathing beside me. Every exhale from her chest sounded foreign now, like it belonged to a stranger. I kept wondering how long she had been lying, how many nights she'd gone out under the pretense of late work, how many smiles she had saved for him instead of me. The breaking point came a week later. She told me she'd be late again, that same calm excuse, but I didn't believe a word. I followed her. Parked 2 blocks away from her office, my hands clammy on the steering wheel, I watched as she walked out. Her heels clicked sharp against the pavement, her hair down in loose waves, the kind of effort she never made for me anymore. She slipped into an Uber and I tailed it through the quiet streets until it pulled up to a hotel on the west side. I sat in my car, headlights off, pulse hammering. Then I saw her. She stepped onto the curb and he was there waiting. Elliot. They didn't even wait until they were inside. He leaned in and kissed her, and she melted into it, smiling the smile that used to be mine. Something in me cracked open, and it didn't stop breaking. I didn't sleep that night, didn't eat the next day, couldn't focus at work. My mind replayed the image over and over. Her arms around him, her mouth against his. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It had a face, a body, a kiss. Finally, I confronted her. "Claire," I said one evening, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "How long have you been sleeping with Elliot?" The color drained from her face instantly. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie." I grabbed her phone from the counter and threw it on the table. The messages were still open, proof glowing on the screen. "I know." She stared at me, jaw tight, lips trembling, then turned her head away. "Ryan, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think." My chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. "You've been lying to me for months." Her eyes filled with tears, but no apology came. Not right away. Just a whisper. Fragile. Almost rehearsed. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "That's all you have to say?" My voice cracked, raw with disbelief. "You've been sneaking around behind my back and all you can say is you didn't mean to hurt me." Finally, she broke. The sobs came, and with them the words that hollowed me out. "I don't know why I did it, I felt like something was missing. He made me feel alive again. Alive again." The words gutted me. They made every dinner, every trip, every night I'd held her through tears feel meaningless, like I had never been enough. I told her to leave. She didn't argue. She packed a bag and went to stay with a friend, the silence between us louder than any fight. The days that followed were a kind of hell I didn't know existed. Every corner of our townhouse screamed her name. Her mug still sat on the shelf. Her sweater was still draped over the dining chair. The bedroom still carried the faint trace of her perfume. I walked through the house like a ghost, unable to eat, unable to sleep, her words echoing in my skull. Missing. A week later, I woke in the middle of the night to footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Heavy. My first thought was that Claire had come back to grab something, so I called her name softly. No answer. I climbed out of bed, heart pounding, and crept toward the noise. The hall was empty. My skin prickled. I turned back toward the bedroom and froze. There in the doorway stood a shadow, tall, gaunt, its head tilted at an angle no human neck could manage. It didn't move, just watched me. My throat went dry. "Claire?" I whispered, though I knew it wasn't her. The figure didn't speak. Slowly, unnervingly, it raised a long, bony hand and pointed at me. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over myself. When I blinked, it was gone. That was the first night. Since then, it happens more often. The shadow follows me. It appears in the kitchen when I turn my back, in the bathroom mirror, standing just behind me, outside the bedroom window at night. Always silent, always pointing. I don't know if it's real or if my mind is unraveling from everything Claire did to me. Maybe it's the embodiment of guilt, of failure. Maybe it's something darker, something that latched onto me the night my marriage died, feeding on my heartbreak. I don't live in the townhouse anymore. I couldn't bear it. Claire is gone for good now, moved in with Elliot, or so I heard. Maybe she's happy. Maybe she found what she was missing. But me? I can't move on. Wherever I go, the shadow follows. It waits in the corners of every room. It waits at the foot of my bed when I wake, gasping in the night. And always, always it points at me, as if to say, "This is your fault." And maybe in some twisted way it is. I was 32 when I realized the walls I'd built to separate my personal life from my professional one weren't walls at all. They were paper, thin and fragile, already starting to tear. My name is Adrian Cross. For 3 years, I'd run a private investigation agency out of a shoebox office wedged above a pawn shop on Harrison Avenue in Brookfield. By day, the city gleamed, steel and glass towering into the clouds, spotless sidewalks, the illusion of order. By night, It drowned in neon haze, buzzing signs, and hollow laughter echoing off wet pavement. On the surface, I looked like I belonged here. A bachelor, steady, hardworking, dependable. The kind of man you could trust to pull the truth out of shadows, for a fee. That reputation for discretion grew faster than I expected. Husbands who smelled perfume on shirts that shouldn't smell like perfume, wives who found receipts for dinners that weren't with them, business partners who thought money was leaking through invisible cracks. Didn't matter. If someone wanted the truth, they found me. But there was another truth I never advertised. I was in love with Elena Mercer, a woman who carried a ring that wasn't mine. She was 30, but she wore her years with a kind of effortless elegance, the kind that turned every glance into an invitation. Her auburn hair caught light like a flame, her green eyes daring me to believe her when she said she wasn't happy at home. "He doesn't see me anymore, Adrian," she whispered once, her hand brushing mine in the low glow of a cafe. "I feel like I'm living in a cage." She said her husband was a stranger now. She said she wanted freedom. She said she wanted me. And I believed her. God help me, I wanted to believe her. But when you spend your life digging through lies, you should know better than to think your own won't be unearthed. The knock came on a Wednesday morning. I was nursing lukewarm coffee, pretending to care about the Brookfield Gazette, flipping through headlines like they meant anything anymore. Outside, rain tapped against the window in a steady rhythm, soft but unrelenting. Then, 3 sharp knocks on the door, firm, deliberate. "Come in," I called. The door creaked open, and a man stepped inside. Wealth, dressed in caution, tall, slender, silver threaded through hair combed back with precision, rimless glasses perched on a narrow nose made for disapproval. His charcoal suit fit too perfectly to be anything but tailored. "Mr. Cross?" His voice was low, careful. "That's me," I said, standing and extending my hand. His grip was firm but soft, the kind of handshake born in boardrooms, not construction sites. "Grant Mercer," he said. The name stole the air from my lungs. Elena's husband. I forced my face into stillness. "Please sit. What can I do for you?" He lowered himself into the chair across from me, hands folding neatly, eyes scanning the room like he was cataloging every detail before landing on mine. "You come highly recommended," he said. "Discreet. Reliable. That's what I need." I nodded once. "That's what I offer." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I have reason to believe my wife is being unfaithful." The words sliced straight through me. My pulse hammered in my throat. "I see," I managed. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "You'd like me to confirm your suspicions?" "Yes. I want you to follow her. Find out where she goes, who she meets. I don't want guesses. I want proof." He slipped a small envelope from his pocket and pushed it across the desk. Inside, a photograph and a check. My stomach tightened as I slid it open. Elena's face smiled up at me from the glossy print, a smile I knew too well. I forced myself to look at it the way I'd look at any case file, but my hand betrayed me, trembling as I tucked it back into the envelope. "I can do that," I said flatly as though reading a script. "How long would you like me to run the surveillance?" 2 weeks, Grant said. "That should be enough, unless you think longer is necessary." 2 weeks will do." He gave a single nod. "Good. I'll trust you with the rest." When he stood, he lingered for a moment, his gaze weighing me like a scale. "I assume your discretion is as good as I've been told." "It is," I said, though my throat was dry. "Then we'll speak again soon." When the door closed, the office felt smaller, suffocating. I collapsed back into my chair, my pulse racing, Elena's smile still burning into me from the photograph. This was the trap I'd built with my own hands. If I told Grant the truth, I'd lose Elena and ruin my business in a single blow. If I lied, I risked being caught, and Grant Mercer was not the kind of man I wanted as an enemy. I opened the bottom drawer, pulled out a bottle of scotch and poured a glass. The burn in my throat grounded me, but only just. I stared at the envelope, at Elena's face. And with the liquor still searing my chest, I made my decision. I decided to pass the case to my new operative, Daniel Hayes. He was young, eager, sharp in a way only fresh blood could be. And most importantly, he didn't know about Elena. That ignorance made him useful. He would follow her, record her movements, document the small details. Then he'd hand me the report, and I'd decide what truth Grant Mercer would see. I told myself it was the safest way, for me, for Elena, for everyone. For the next 2 weeks, I avoided her. No late-night visits, no whispered phone calls in the dark, no stolen kisses behind closed doors. Each time I thought of her number glowing on my phone screen, I forced my hand still. This is for her protection, I told myself. She'll understand. She'll thank me when this storm passes. Meanwhile, Daniel threw himself into the job with the hungry determination of a rookie desperate to prove himself. Every night he came back with notes, precise times, locations, names scrawled with energy in his tight handwriting. "She's careful," he said one evening, dropping a stack of photos onto my desk. "But not careful enough." I forced myself not to ask questions, not to linger over the images. I stayed detached, professional, or at least I tried. By the end of the second week, Daniel practically glowed with pride. "I'll have the full report typed up by morning," he said with a grin. "It's thorough. You're going to like it." But when morning came, something was off. Daniel wasn't finished. At exactly 10 o'clock, Grant Mercer arrived at my office. He walked in like a man who had never been denied an answer in his life. Calm, precise, self-contained. "Good morning, Mr. Mercer," I said, forcing a smile that felt stiff on my face. "Coffee? That would be nice." I poured us both cups. The steam curled between us like smoke while sweat dampened my palms. Just then, Daniel appeared in the doorway, a folder clutched in his hand. "Morning, boss," he said, giving me a quick nod before acknowledging my client. "Mr. Mercer." Grant returned the nod, polite but cool. Daniel handed me the file. My heart hammered as I flipped it open, sliding one copy, the original, across to Grant. The duplicate I kept face down in front of me. Grant read in silence. His expression didn't shift. He turned each page slowly, carefully, like a man cataloging facts rather than reacting to them. When he finally closed the folder, he looked straight at me. "3," he said. My throat tightened. "Beg your pardon?" I was afraid of something like this. His voice was steady, clinical. 3 lovers. In just 2 weeks. The blood drained from my face. "What?" He tapped the folder with 2 fingers. "That's what your report says, isn't it? Thorough work. Painful, but thorough." I scrambled for composure, using the excuse of dabbing at a splash of coffee near the duplicate file. My eyes devoured the pages. Photographs, timestamps, locations. Elena at a cafe with 1 man, leaving a hotel with another, meeting a third under the cloak of night. Daniel's work was meticulous, too meticulous. Every page screamed of betrayal. My throat closed as the truth suffocated me. 3. Not just 1. Not just me. 3. When I finally raised my head, Grant Mercer was watching me with a faint, knowing grin. "You seem surprised, Mr. Cross," he said softly. "Don't you believe your own report?" My mouth opened, but no sound came out. My chest felt heavy, my hands numb against the desk. Grant leaned back, his glasses catching the light. "There are some women you simply can't trust, no matter what they say, no matter how sweetly they smile. Some people are hollow. They'll eat you alive if you let them." His words sank into me like stones into deep water. He stood, smoothed his jacket, and tucked the folder neatly under his arm. "Thank you for your work," he said. His tone was clipped, final. "Your discretion is appreciated." Then he was gone. The office felt silent and suffocating. I stared at the duplicate report lying open in front of me. Elena's face, frozen in photographs with men who weren't me, men who weren't her husband. Piece by piece, the illusion I'd clung to shattered. That night I didn't go to her. I didn't call. I didn't drink. I sat in the dark of my apartment, the city buzzing faintly outside, replaying every word she'd ever whispered to me, every promise, every lie. I'd built my life around unmasking deception, and still, I had been living inside one. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I slipped the duplicate report into an envelope, wrote her name across the front, and left it outside her apartment door. No note, no explanation, just the truth. When I walked away, I didn't look back, because some women you can't save, and some lies you don't survive. I never imagined the deepest wound of my life would come from the very person I had trusted with everything. My name is Marcus Reynolds. I'm 34, a project manager at a mid-sized software company in Columbus, Ohio. For the past decade, I've been married to Claire. If you asked our friends or family, they'd probably describe us as the couple who had it figured out. The kind of pair who smiled at each other in the grocery store, who posted cheerful vacation photos, who raised their daughter in a house filled with warmth. But appearances lie. What people see at dinner parties or on social media is often just a mask, a careful performance. Behind closed doors, the truth can rot quietly. Claire and I met in college. She was studying education with this easy way of connecting with people, while I was grinding through business management courses. What pulled me in first was her laugh. It wasn't restrained or polished. It was real, unfiltered, the kind of laugh that made a dull room feel alive. For the first time in my life, I felt lighter, just being near someone. We married young. Too young, if I'm honest. I was 24, she was 22, and we leapt in with the kind of reckless optimism only youth can give. 4 years later, our daughter Lily was born. By then, I was already climbing the corporate ladder. Late nights, flights, endless presentations. While Claire stayed home, then eventually picked up part-time teaching once Lily entered preschool. Looking back, the cracks were there. Small at first. I'd come home bone-tired, barely able to eat dinner before falling into bed, and Claire seemed restless, like the quiet suburb life was shrinking around her. I convinced myself it was normal, just marriage going through growing pains. People always said relationships weren't easy. I repeated that to myself like a prayer. Then Lily got sick. Last winter, the doctors told us she had a rare autoimmune disorder. Everything changed overnight. Our schedules became a blur of hospital visits, tests, consultations. The bills piled faster than my paycheck could cover. Claire tried to be strong, but I saw her unraveling in real time. She began drinking in the evenings. Just to take the edge off, she'd say, swirling the glass in her hand with a forced smile. But it didn't take the edge off. It dulled her, made her shorter with me, more withdrawn with Lily. I thought the stress of our daughter's illness was tearing us apart. What I didn't know was that Claire had already found another outlet for her pain. Or rather, other people. It was a Tuesday night when I first felt the ground shift beneath me. Claire said she was running out to grab groceries around 7. Lily had finally fallen asleep after coughing herself hoarse, and I was sitting in the living room, too drained to do anything but stare at the TV. Claire didn't come back until after 9. When she walked through the door, her hands were empty. "Where's the food?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Her eyes flicked away. Oh God, I'm such an idiot. I ran into Jessica at the store. We got caught up talking. I didn't realize how late it was. She laughed, but it sounded forced, brittle. Her cheeks were flushed and she couldn't quite meet my eyes. Jessica was one of her co-workers. Nice enough, but Claire had never mentioned spending time with her outside of work. The excuse didn't sit right. That night, after she slipped into the shower, I reached for her phone. It was locked. A new passcode. Claire had never used one before. A chill ran through me, settling like lead in my stomach. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I started watching, tracking little changes in her routine. Thursday nights, she claimed she was grading papers with colleagues. Saturday mornings, she suddenly needed to clear her head with solo runs. Her phone never left her side. She smiled less at me, though sometimes she'd overcompensate, forcing affection at odd moments like she was trying to cover something up. Then came the night she fell asleep on the couch, her phone still in her hand. My heart hammered as I gently pried it from her fingers. I tried Lily's birthday as the code. The screen unlocked. What I saw made my throat close. 13 different men. Not one mistake, not a single lapse, but 13 separate lives she had invited into the ruins of ours. Some messages were explicit, graphic in ways I can't erase from my mind. Others were softer but no less devastating. Words of intimacy, confessions of longing, private jokes. Words that had once belonged to me. My hands shook as I scrolled, each conversation worse than the last. Hotel bookings, quick meetings in parked cars. And then, God, times she had invited them into our house, our home, while I was away traveling for work. I remember staring at that glowing screen, my chest pounding so violently I thought I might black out. It wasn't just betrayal. It was carelessness, recklessness, like she wanted to destroy every corner of what we had built. And in that moment, the image of the woman I had loved for a decade shattered into something unrecognizable. When she stirred awake, I dropped the phone onto the cushion and shut my eyes, feigning sleep. But inside, I knew something had splintered in me beyond repair. 2 days later, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Over breakfast, as the coffee pot gurgled and sunlight streaked across the counter, I said quietly, "Claire, we need to talk." She didn't look up from her mug. "About what?" "I know," I said, my voice flat, foreign to my own ears. "I know about the messages, the men." Her cup froze midair. For a heartbeat, she was stone. Then she set it down slowly, her eyes narrowing, cold and unreadable. "You went through my phone? That's what you're upset about?" The words caught in my throat, my voice cracking as it broke free. "You've been sleeping with half the damn city while our daughter is fighting for her life, and you're mad I looked at your phone?" Her face shifted, something raw, almost shameful, tangled with defiance. "You don't understand what it's been like, Marcus. You're never here. I'm drowning. You're always at work, always gone. I needed someone." 13 someones? The words shot out of me like a gunshot. She flinched, then stood abruptly, pacing across the kitchen tiles. "You think I'm proud of this? You think I planned it? I was lonely. I was angry. I was—" "Stop." My voice was low, trembling, but it carried more weight than I'd ever heard from myself. "Don't you dare make this about me." That morning, something inside me died. I thought betrayal itself, the texts, the strangers, the lies, was the darkest thing I'd ever face. I had no idea the real horror hadn't even begun. A month later, I was driving Lily to another specialist appointment when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. "Is this Marcus Reynolds?" a man's voice asked. "Yes. This is Detective Walsh with Columbus PD. I need you to come down to the station. It concerns your wife." My grip on the wheel tightened. "What happened?" "She was arrested this morning. Attempted abduction." The words didn't compute. Abduction? Claire? That doesn't make sense. By the time I reached the station, reality had become a waking nightmare. They told me Claire had been caught in a supermarket parking lot. She'd lifted another woman's baby carrier and tried to walk off. When the father confronted her, she pepper-sprayed him, screaming that he was the kidnapper. Witnesses restrained her until police arrived. She reeked of vodka. When questioned, she insisted she thought the child was Lily. When I saw her in holding, I barely recognized her. Her skin was sallow, her hair unwashed, her eyes wild and hollow. As soon as she spotted me, she broke into sobs. "They took her from me, Marcus. They took Lily. I was just trying to get her back." I stood there, numb, watching the woman I married unravel before my eyes. I didn't know if it was alcohol madness or both. I only knew that the Claire I loved no longer existed. The weeks that followed blurred into chaos. CPS opened a case, questioning whether Lily was safe under my roof. I scrambled for lawyers, character witnesses, every scrap of proof that I was the stable parent. Claire was ordered into rehab, then a psychiatric evaluation. At night, when Lily finally slept, I'd lie awake, haunted by memories, the late-night lies, the endless drinking, the 13 men, and now the attempted kidnapping. The truth settled on me like lead. I had been blind for years. I had smoothed over the cracks, explained away the warning signs, convinced myself things were normal because I wanted to believe in the life we had built. And yet, the cruelest part, some fragment of me still loved her. Or maybe I only loved the ghost of who she once was. Now Lily is everything. My only focus, my anchor. She needs stability, a parent she can trust not to collapse. Last month I filed for divorce. Claire's lawyer is arguing for supervised visitation, but I don't know if I can ever hand Lily over to her again. Not after what she tried to do. People talk about monsters lurking in alleys, shadows creeping in the dark. But mine wore a wedding ring, whispered, "I love you" in bed, and held my hand through the years. And the most terrifying truth of all is how easily love can disguise itself as safety, until the mask finally slips. I was 31 when my life split in two. There was the life I thought I was living, and then there was the life that had been unraveling quietly behind my back. At the time, I still considered myself a grounded guy, nothing extraordinary. My name's Ethan Ward. I've spent nearly my entire life in Ravenbrook, Pennsylvania, a small river town where gossip moves faster than the water itself. My parents still live across the bridge, in the same ranch house where I grew up. I wasn't rich, but I had stability. I worked as a project coordinator for a construction supply company. Steady hours, reliable paycheck, decent benefits. I owned a modest 2-story house with a little porch that needed paint, drove a beat-up Ford truck that coughed every winter but never completely gave up, and believed I had a marriage strong enough to last. Her name was Lena. We'd been together nearly 10 years, married for 5. I met her when we were both 21 in a crowded coffee shop near Penn State's campus. She was buried in accounting textbooks, and I was lost in project management notes. She had this spark in her, a warmth that made people lean closer when she spoke. She asked questions like she genuinely cared about the answers. That first meeting was clumsy. She spilled her iced latte all over my sleeve. She apologized so much I couldn't stop laughing, and somehow that mess turned into a love I was certain would last forever. But forever doesn't always mean what you think it does. Our early marriage was good, better than good even. We had our rituals, Friday night takeout, little weekend road trips with bad playlists, long debates about movies that ended in laughter. She pushed me to eat better, exercise more. I encouraged her to keep studying until she earned her CPA. We balanced each other, or at least I thought so. Things started to change when Lena got hired at Grant & Cole Accounting, the biggest firm in Ravenbrook. That's when her schedule stretched thinner, her hours longer. She stayed late for client dinners. Her phone became an extension of her hand, her thumbs flying across the screen, but rarely with me. When I walked into the room, she angled the phone away. Whenever I asked about her day, her answers shrank to single words. Fine, busy, stressful. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I hadn't been giving her enough attention. Maybe marriage just settled into silence. But deep down, in the pit of my stomach, I knew. The man's name, the one who cracked my life in half, was Dom & Cole. It was early October when I got my first undeniable sign, a Thursday night. Thursdays were always ours. Thai food, a dumb comedy on Netflix, feet tangled together on the couch. That night she texted me at 6:15. Don't wait up. End of quarter review. Might be late. I didn't question it until I heard her car pull into the driveway at 8:30. When she walked through the door, I noticed the little things. Her hair slightly mussed, lipstick smudged at the corner of her mouth, a sharp musky cologne clinging to her clothes that wasn't mine. "Long night?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah," she answered quickly, tossing her bag onto the chair. "I'm beat. I'm going to shower." She disappeared upstairs before I could say another word. Later, while the shower ran, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I'm not proud of what I did, but something inside me already knew. The preview on the screen read, "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." The sender's name, Damen. My chest tightened until it hurt. I knew him. He was one of the firm's partners. I'd met him once at their Christmas party. Perfect smile, tailored suit, a handshake that radiated polished confidence. Standing next to him, I'd felt like a kid wearing his dad's oversized jacket. I didn't open the message. I couldn't. My hands shook as I set the phone back down. When Lena slipped into bed later, damp hair brushing my arm, I forced myself to stay still, breathing slow, pretending to be asleep. That was the night trust died. The next day I called up my oldest friend, Victor Hayes. We met at O'Malley's, the bar we'd been going to since college. Victor was blunt, the kind of guy who never coated the truth with sugar. I told him everything, my voice low, eyes darting around the dim room as if someone might overhear. Victor leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Ethan, you know what that is? That's not a work text. That's not innocent." "I don't want to jump to conclusions," I muttered, staring at the condensation sliding down my beer glass. He gave me a hard look, eyes steady. "Man, you already know the conclusion. Don't gaslight yourself. You've been with her 10 years. You know her. If you feel it, it's real." His words hit like stones, heavy and cold, sinking deep into my stomach. I tried to hold myself together. I tried to believe maybe it was a misunderstanding. But a week later, I cracked. We were eating dinner in silence, the clink of silverware against the plates sounding louder than it should have in the stillness of the house. Finally, I put my fork down and asked, quietly but firmly, "Lena, are you seeing someone else?" Her head jerked up, eyes wide, startled like I'd slapped her. For a second, she just stared at me, offended. "What?" "Ethan, no. Why would you even—" "Because I'm not stupid," I said, my voice low, steady but shaking underneath. "You're different. Distant." And I saw a text. The color drained from her face. She froze, completely still, before trying to recover. She shook her head quickly, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle. "It's not what you think. Damien, he flirts with everyone. It's harmless." "Harmless? Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." "That's harmless?" She opened her mouth, closed it again, then pushed her chair back abruptly. "I don't want to fight about this right now." Her footsteps pounded upstairs, the sound of the bedroom door slamming echoing through the house. I sat there at the table, staring at my untouched food, realizing the woman across from me wasn't the same person I had built a life with. I was living with a stranger. The betrayal was bad enough. But what came after is what still keeps me awake at night. It started with whispers. At first, I thought I imagined it. Late at night, when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear Lena in the kitchen, her voice low, urgent, as if she was having a conversation with someone. But when I crept downstairs, the room was empty. The back door was locked, the whispers stopped the instant I entered. Other nights, I'd find her standing at the living room window in complete darkness, staring out into the yard as though she was waiting for someone. "What are you doing?" I'd ask, trying to sound casual. She'd glance back at me with a smile that was just a little too wide, her teeth catching the dim light. "Just thinking," she'd whisper. I didn't press. Something in me didn't want to know what she was really thinking. Then, one night, I woke at 3 a.m. to find her side of the bed cold and empty. I padded downstairs and froze in the kitchen doorway. Lena was standing dead center in the room, her face turned toward the corner as if someone was standing there. But the corner was empty. Her lips moved, whispering words I couldn't make out. "Lena," I whispered. She spun around fast, her eyes wide, almost glowing in the low light. And her smile, God, I swear, her smile stretched too far, like something invisible was tugging at the corners. "Ethan," she said softly, "go back to bed." I did. Not because I wanted to, but because I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I'd fallen asleep on the couch with the TV still on. Around 2:45 a.m., a heavy thud upstairs snapped me awake. My chest throbbed with panic as I grabbed the flashlight and crept up the steps. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Lena wasn't alone. Something else stood beside the bed, a tall black figure, hunched, its skin clinging to it like wet paper. Its face was twisted into a grotesque grin stretched ear to ear, its eyes burning like white lamps in the dark. And Lena. She wasn't screaming, she wasn't fighting, she was with it. She stood beside the figure with her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her own mouth stretched in that same impossible grin. Together, in perfect unison, they turned to look at me. "Ethan," she whispered, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. It was deeper, layered, inhuman. "You should have never looked at the phone." The flashlight slipped from my trembling hands and clattered to the floor. I don't remember running. I just remember waking up hours later in my truck, parked outside Victor's house, my face wet with tears, my hands still shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. When I finally went back to the house at dawn, Lena was gone. All of it. Her clothes, her toiletries, even her favorite coffee mug vanished. No note, no sign of struggle, nothing. The police filed a missing person report, but I could see the suspicion in their eyes. They thought I was holding something back, that maybe I'd snapped. But how could I tell them the truth? That my wife hadn't just cheated, she'd let something inhuman into our home and then she'd gone with it willingly. Victor says he believes me. Or maybe he just pretends. He lets me crash at his place when the thought of sleeping in that empty house becomes unbearable. But sometimes, when I drive past the accounting firm, I see Damien's car still parked out front long after midnight. And sometimes, God help me, I see something else too. A tall black shadow standing motionless in the upstairs window, watching. It's been almost a year now and I still don't know what's worse, losing Lena to another man, or losing her to whatever that thing was. But every time I close my eyes, I see that grin, and I hear her voice, low, broken, wrong, whispering in the dark. "You should have never looked at the phone."